Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to Restoring the Mosaic. So today I have a special guest with me. I met Jeremy in Edmonton, be a couple of years ago, I think, Jeremy.
Yeah, it was
And
probably two.
yeah, anyways, and then just in the last couple of weeks, we've reconnected. And then we really reconnected because both of us were speaking at the Regina City Council meeting last week. So I thought that it would be helpful for you to hear a little bit about Jeremy's story. And then maybe, Jeremy, you can just talk about your experiencing, how you experienced the council meeting itself. Does that sound like a deal?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Why don't you take it away, introduce yourself, and why you're speaking about this?
Well, my name is Jeremy Williamson, and I got involved in this probably just about 5 years ago. The C-16 2017 had passed or was about to be passed, and Jordan Peterson was having his rise. And the school board here in Medicine Hat was trying to bring a transgender, intersex, LGBT policy in that would allow teenage boys into the girls' locker rooms. So of course, my daughter had just started school the year before. She was in kindergarten. Now she was in grade 1, and I was like, okay, I want to be involved with my child's education, and I really don't agree with this. And I was born with a condition which the Intersex Society of North America considers an intersex condition. Whether that's an actual medical body or not, it's up to discussion. But I was born with a slight outward defect in my genitalia that was apparent at my birth. My mother had me checked out thoroughly. She wanted to make sure that there wasn't any other complications or anything going on there. And I knew about this. I mean, all through my childhood, I knew it was a little bit different, but it wasn't to me. You didn't talk about sex when you were 6, 7 years old like you do now, and so I didn't care.
It really wasn't important to you, was it, at 6 or 7?
No,
Absolutely
it's not
not.
something that I ever thought. And my parents, said I was a boy, and I said, okay, I'm a boy, and this is why you are a boy. And so as I got into puberty, typical stuff, you start noticing changes. And then I brought it up with my mother, and I said, I noticed I'm a little bit different. And she said, yes. And this is when she told me that she had me checked out and everything was fine. And it's just, slightly different. And so I didn't really have any issues. And I went, it never came up. I never had any problems in university. I never had any problems in friendships. I actually, until I was an adult, my parents were the only people that knew that I had this condition. And I told a close friend as an adult. And then, of course, my wife knew once we got married. And then it comes time when, the school board here in Medicine Hat is trying to bring in this policy. And I was like, well, they're essentially welcoming me to walk into the girls' locker rooms, because the policies that were being discussed around the province of Alberta at the time had included allowing family members to go into, who identified as whatever sex, to go into the locker rooms on field trips or when they're watching a game. Of course, our local division didn't do that, but that was what was being pushed by people like.
So that was even being allowed, though, as a dad, that you could go in if your child identified as gender neutral, non-binary, whatever, or gender confused, I call it, the transgender, then you as a dad could actually go in with your child.
What I mean is, if I identified as gender dysphoric or as a different sex, I could go. If my daughter was playing on a soccer team, I could go into the girls' locker room because I was identifying as the opposite sex, and I was a family member of the person that was playing in the game.
Wow. I don't think very many people understand anything about intersex, or that it is under the transgender umbrella. They've included all intersex people, which has nothing to do with transgender or gender dysphoria, although there may be some elements of gender dysphoria that some experience, but it's a medical condition. This isn't something that someone just thinks they're in the wrong body. This is a medical
Yeah.
condition. Totally different.
And but see what the thing that really irked me, really made me come out publicly and say this, which is something is like both my wife and I were like, do we really want people to know this about me? I mean, is it relevant? Right. But the eh, going back to Jordan Peterson and some of the first arguments he had on his campus, and the proponents of C16 at the time, their main argument was that, well, what about intersex people? Intersex people don't know what sex they are, so we should honor them in their choice of whatever sex they are, right? And they claim to be speaking on our behalf in
Right.
order to pass this law that they had no intention of including us in their little group of special people. Right?
But what about that? Intersex people, I mean, before we could test, I mean, chromosomally, certainly there may have been some confusion with very extreme cases, right? And there's different designations, medical diagnoses regarding the intersex. And of course, the transgender have tried to take all of that over now. But would you think that most intersex people are actually confused about their sexuality? Well, I
No,
mean,
there are some rare cases where intersex people were raised as a woman,
right,
and they because they had a womb, right? But they have no ovaries,
right.
right? So they were raised as women, but they found out that, oh, actually when they actually did the testing, when they checked why they couldn't get pregnant, that's when they actually found out that they were men, right? And ultimately it goes, I mean, a lot of people hate me for saying this statement, but it goes back to, if you get your chromosome test done, if there is any evidence that you had a Y chromosome, that means that you were meant to be male, right? But because of the biological defects, because of mutations, you didn't develop normally, right? You developed with an aberration. And
Right. This
so,
is in the womb, right? Right from
yes,
the very beginning. That something didn't happen that is normally happening. And intersex is a very rare condition.
yes, yeah. And that, with women that are intersex, sometimes they're mistaken for men because the mutation actually caused the Y part of the chromosome to drop off after it had replicated so many times. I'm really dumbing it down to layman's because I don't even
That's
understand
okay, because I'm not a physician, so I don't
it.
understand it all either.
But basically, uh, they still had two X chromosomes, but one of the X chromosomes was deformed and it looked like a Y, right?
I see.
And so they were female at birth. So there really is only two sexes. It's just sometimes there's a mutation on one sex or the other that causes them to appear like the opposite sex.
It would almost be like, if we want to think about an abnormality, it'd be like having a cleft lip or something that is just is underdeveloped or overdeveloped. It's a little bit different, right?
Yeah.
Just a little
And
bit.
like a cleft lip is far more common, right?
Yes, yes.
But that's still an abnormality, and intersex is actually an abnormality that is very rare.
And I'm not saying you're abnormal, Jeremy.
Well,
We all are a little
even my wife
abnormal,
might think I'm abnormal.
right? Oh,
Right. So it's so anyway. There's all this condition. I grew up with it, and so I announced it publicly to the school board. And at that time, I actually garnered myself some protections under C16 because they couldn't just dismiss me because I was one of the people that they were supposed to be doing this all for.
Right.
And I also was able to adopt my own pronouns because C16 specifically said I could have my own pronouns. And so I started using that against them. And I told a member of the media here that my pronouns were sire or your eminence. And because sire, because I was a father, and your eminence, because I had eminent power over them to control what they were allowed to say.
I don't think that would go over very well.
No, it didn't. They were quite upset with that. That actually caused quite a little stir here in Medicine Hat for a few days. But you notice that at the Regina City Council meeting, I mentioned sire, as some people know me as sire or Sire Williamson, and not once did anybody there refer to me as sire, even though that meeting they're supposed to be helping minorities and they're supposed to be following the law, which states that I'm allowed to use my own pronouns, and it's a hate crime if they don't use them.
So that seems like a little bit of a double standard, wouldn't you think? I mean,
Yes.
I'm not in a, I don't, I was going to say I'm not in agreement with all of the pronouns. And I mean, when I say that, I think it's very labeling everyone is dehumanizing people. But I understand why you're doing it. And it certainly would ruffle feathers. So tell me about, like you testified at the Regina City Council. What did you feel about that and about the questions? Did you feel that people heard you? What did you think?
Well, I mean, leading up to, because I was one of the last people to speak. There was like 26 of 31 or something like that. So I had the opportunity to listen to everybody that came before me, and I found that many of the counselors were trying to understand and they were
Yes.
legitimately listening. But there were a couple of counselors. I don't know all their names, so I couldn't say, but they seemed very hostile to any opposition, and they didn't have any actual responses to when people brought up an issue. So like the transgender person there, I can't remember their name.
Oh, is that Jen Smith?
Yes, Jen Smith.
Oh,
Yeah.
So let me interject just quickly.
Yeah.
I was mortified, actually, at the number of times the counselor interrupted Jen Smith. In fact, it started almost the minute he started to talk about being transgender, and then saying that he disagreed with medically transitioning children and the whole movement that seems to be happening. And I think there were at least 6 interruptions. It's like they just did not want to hear him speak. And I'm like, hold it, this is just seems so wrong.
Yeah. But we've seen that with I won't say his name here so you don't get in trouble, but the fella in BC who violated the court order against speaking about what they were doing to his daughter.
Right.
And this hostility to anybody that speaks out against them, that doesn't agree with their agenda. And that's actually what I've encountered myself as time went on, is that they have an agenda, and that's the best way of putting it. They have an agenda, and they're not going to let hell or high water change that. And so when somebody comes up with something that is different from what their agenda is, they have to shut them down because it will, poke holes in their boat and they'll sink.
Well, that's the whole cancel culture, right? Yeah. And certainly you go back to 2017, and it was when Jordan Peterson came on the media front. It was just right after I'd published my book on closing the floodgates, setting the record straight on gender and sexuality. And as I listened to him, I'm thinking, oh my goodness, what a fresh wind of reality. And he isn't anti-gay. I'm not anti-gay, but I am pro-truth. And I would say I'm against, I don't like to say I'm against people because I absolutely am not, but I am against the agendas. Certainly that is out there. And that was really obvious that there was an agenda that had been proposed to the Regina City Council. Did you find that so?
Yeah, and there, again, I don't know the names of the counselors, but the two male counselors, at least I presume they're male. I don't want to make judgments, but they specifically wanted to force this through, and it didn't matter what anybody was saying. And I found that when they asked my questions, they were trying to debunk me. They weren't really interested in knowing what's had happened to me and how the law C-16 would affect me. They wanted to find a way of putting me down. The last person that asked me a question there, because he wanted to say, you know, what do you know about the medical profession, right? And he wanted to know what my response was from the medical profession. You know, have any doctors actually said this to you, right? And it wasn't that he was trying to find out more details and he had a question of me. He wanted to pigeonhole me into just another person that was trying to stop his righteous agenda.
So
And
somehow to disqualify you
disqualify
as
me as being
well,
credible.
you and what you're saying. And yeah, and it's like it disqualifies you as a person.
Yeah.
You know, the very thing that we are often criticized about, that we are dehumanizing people by talking about these things. It's the very opposite. That they often come against, the activists often come against those who are questioning and saying, this doesn't all seem to add up. And because we question the narrative, we become those who are dehumanizing. And I have to shake my head and go, okay, I'm not sure how this works on one side, but not the other. You know, it just doesn't make sense. There was
Well, it's
something.
like that when Jen Smith was speaking and the female counselor, I believe it was a female counselor, said that what you're saying is very hurtful to people, and I'd ask you to stop talking about it. You know, like, and it's just like, you're not transgender. You're speaking to a transgender person, and you're telling that transgender person that what he's saying is hurtful to transgenders. That they don't realize just how, well, silly they sound. They sound really silly when they make statements like that.
Well, it means that speech, then, of any kind, speech is harmful. And that goes right along with this whole sense of freedoms. That because if your speech and what you say is harmful, then you don't have the freedom to say it.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it's interesting. One of the things, so when I was testifying, I decided not to give all the facts and figures this time. I've done that before, and it's like it just goes way over their heads. And I'm not saying that they can't consciously take it in. It's that they don't want to hear it.
No,
They don't
they don't
care
actually
about
care about facts.
They don't care about scientific, real research, not some of the other stuff that we see out there. And they don't want to hear that. So I thought, okay, I will just share an illustration. And so I did that about a young mom who was struggling with pornography and had been since she was 10 years old at a sleepover. It started there and then it continued. And here she is 32, she has 2 kids, and she's thinking of, you know, having a lesbian affair. And so, and I wanted to bring the example that in talking with her and helping her achieve her goals of reducing and hopefully for her eliminating this unwanted pornography towards same-sex attraction, that would be considered a criminal offense under Bill C-6. And there was a lawyer that testified after me, and he stated, I mean, I just kind of went, I'm still scratching my head over this. He said that pornography is not a sexual behavior. I am like,
100 million people would disagree with that lawyer.
I mean, this is a lawyer, and he is representing LGBT interests, and you know, but No one questioned him. Of course, I can't go back in and question him because I've already had my time, my 5 minutes, and we never get any more. And I was just absolutely astounded at the whole lack of confrontation to people who say things that are absolutely ludicrous. They
Yeah.
know nothing about behavior, obviously. They know nothing about psychology, and they know nothing about pornography. Well, who knows what they
And
know
they
about
clearly didn't
pornography,
know
right?
anything
But it
about,
is a sexual behavior.
they clearly didn't, none of them knew anything about intersex either. I mean,
That's
that
right.
whole period where there was like, 2 minutes of time where they were having technical difficulties after I spoke there. So but I mean, that same lawyer, I think it's the same one.
I think he's from Regina.
Yeah. And he said that no one in the world had been persecuted, no Christian in the world had been persecuted under these anti-conversion therapy laws. And I mean, I knew that was a lie because I knew of people in the past. But the very next day, a pastor in the UK was arrested and roughed up by the police in I think it was in London, um, for preaching from the Bible regarding homosexuality, and it was because of a complaint from an LGBT person that he was saying these things. And then just yesterday, I heard of a politician in Germany that is facing 6 years in prison
I
for
know.
for just holding the Bible open to a passage that condemned homosexuality. Right. So it's just ludicrous things. They say ludicrous, verifiably false things, and nobody in these council meetings questions it. They just, oh, okay, that's what
But
you're
here
saying
you
is
have
true,
someone
and what
like
this person's saying is true. They're both true. Everybody has their own truth.
But here you have someone like Jen Smith who has a story, and he's trying to make the public aware and make the counselors aware of what's happening to children. And they just absolutely want to shut him down immediately. And it's so sad because people are not getting the stories that need to be heard. They're not getting the facts that need to be heard. And I mean, this has been going on for a long time. So it's not that it's new, it's that this bill C6, and the Regina bylaw, which, I mean, there were some lights at the end of the tunnel, so to speak, with what happened after. But the reality is, if Bill C6 passes, then someone like I will be criminalized. I don't know if you're aware, but Free to Care, that I'm involved in and part of that organization, we placed ads last week in the Hill Times, the political newspaper in Ottawa.
Yes, yes, I did.
And did you hear? So we actually had 4 ads that did go in. And it was interesting because the day after my ad went in, which was perhaps more of a challenge because I'm a professional, I wasn't talking about my own experience. I was just saying this will happen if I will be criminalized, I will be convicted or charged at least if this bill passes. And then the rest of the ads were pulled. So that talks a little bit about the absolute power of activists who complain, because the ads were I thought they were so kind. And anyways, but we're just waiting to see now if we can make any little changes of some kind to the last 2 ads so they can be put in, because it's really important. It's talking about people's stories and they need to be heard.
Well, that's the thing too, is we heard many of the proponents of C6 at the Regina meeting talking about how it's all lies and we're fear mongering and we're spreading misinformation about the effects that C6 will have, and yet C6 hasn't even passed yet, and we're seeing ads being banned because, oh well, it's hurtful to the LGBT community. So what do you think is going to happen after C6 is passed? They're going to, if you push an ad to a paper, they're going to report you to the police and have the police come and charge you. That's what they're going to do. They're not going to reply back and say, "Oh, we're not going to accept these ads." They're just,
They're going
essentially,
to show up at your door.
they're going to show up at your door. And so in this, the idea that, I or had these laws been in place when I was a parent, which when I spoke at the meeting, the idea that my parents would be imprisoned because they wanted to choose a sex for me, um, that is very likely to happen. I can see it happening. And it
Well, if
doesn't
they
matter whether it's a
suggest,
medical condition, because the doctors, they have licenses, and this law doesn't just apply to psychologists. They kept saying, "Oh, it's psychologists that are going to be affected by this." It doesn't apply to psychologists. There's nowhere in the legislation that I read that psychologists are the only people that are being targeted here. Like, it doesn't.
no,
I don't know where they get that idea other than to try
any
to.
professional, because and so it comes down to this. If a doctor, well, here we are back to birth, right? And so my experience, I have 6 children, 4 of my own and 2 stepchildren. But my children, the doctor, actually, I argued with the doctor with my last one. I was so sure that he was a girl. He looks nothing like a girl, believe me. But when he was born, the doctor says, "Oh, you have a little boy." And I said, "Are you sure?" Now, I mean, that's 29 years ago. Now the doctor would say, "Well, I'm not really sure, actually, because we only assign
Yeah.
birth sex, a gender. You know, it's just it's gone so far. It's gone
How are how
way,
are
way too
any
far.
how are any children born after C6 going to be able to be provided proper medical care? Because
Well, like
they're not going to
yourself,
be allowed. They're not going to be allowed to say to the parents, "Here's your." They'll just say, "Here's your child, parent one and parent two. Here's your child, and raise it as you see fit." And so they're not going to be able to go and get the shots and the examinations and whatever for their child, because, well, if they pick a sex, everyone knows that the medical conditions that affect people are different depending on you're male or female. So
sexually different. Absolutely.
yeah, like, well, not even just sexually different. I mean, the there women are more prone to osteoporosis, for instance,
Right.
right? So it's like there's all kinds of conditions like that where, if the doctor isn't allowed to say what your sex is and isn't allowed to treat you based on what your apparent sex is, how are they going to treat them for any of these conditions? How are they going to test them? How are they going to say, "Oh, you might want to get checked out for this condition because," for reasons I can't tell you why.
Well, and you know what? I mean, we're going to finish up here in a minute, but there's so many questions out there about all of those things. And I'm not sure if parents are really cognizant about the realities. And that's part of why I do what I do. It's part of why you do what you do. We really want to protect the children. Adults, if an adult wants to call themselves Hercules, maybe they do, okay, I don't care. And if they want to, whatever their behavior, whatever they choose to do, that's their choice. But there's a difference. And see, right away, I'm get labeled as a bigot because I'm suggesting that there is a choice in behavior. And I can go into all the science that refutes the born that way stuff. And believe me, the new stuff coming out has nothing to do with born that way. It's been refuted. And certainly you can't have born that way mantra and fluidity in the same sentence. So, I mean, we're going to have some struggles moving forward. But I mean, let's face it, we need to protect our children. That's the job of the parent. And the parents need to understand what's happening in order to protect their children. So any final words of encouragement, I guess, that you would have for parents, or things that they need to really be aware of in this whole discussion on, I would say, specifically transgender?
Well, I guess for encouragement, if you're, if you have your kids and you still have your kids, you still have, I guess, shall I say, control over your children at this point. And if they're exhibiting signs of dysphoria or whatever, um, know that your kids look up to you. And so a lot of what, the decisions that they make as they get older are going to be based on what you tell them. So if you tell them, oh, you might be right. I better go take you to somebody else to identify what gender you should be. That weakens you and your relationship to your child, and they don't look to you for the answers anymore. They start looking outside. And if you come back and you're very strong for to your little girl, and she says, "Mommy, I'm a boy," and you just say, "Well, you're a girl, but you can enjoy those things, but that doesn't make you a boy. You're still a girl, and I love you the way you are," and um, reinforce in them the actual biology, the actual truth. And then that will actually, when they come out of it, because most, like 85 to 90% of kids come out of this when they get older, when they hit puberty, um, that will reinforce and it will make that transition faster. And I think the real issue with children having questions with their identity is, one, parents are not reinforcing identity in the children of who they are and the value that they have, but also that they're letting society determine the identity of their children, and that's not how it's worked in the
Well, and
past.
I also think, Jeremy, more is caught than taught with children and parents. And the other thing, just as you're talking about that I might suggest in there is that it might be just really good to ask your child why they would even, why do you think that you might be a boy or
That's a very good question,
a
because
girl? Why do you
yeah,
think that?
yeah,
What's causing you to believe that about yourself? And because here are these young children, and I think it's important for parents to understand where this is coming from. Number one. The other thing is, and perhaps it's just because they like all the boy stuff. They're a girl and they like boy stuff. That used to be called a tomboy, but anyways, I mean, I'm not trying to negate the severity of gender dysphoria, which used to be gender identity disorder. But again, it was even more rare than intersex.
yeah.
It's now exploded. But anyways, we can't get into all of that. But yes, talk to your children, lead by example, love them, and keep talking, because down the road, we're going to look back at all of these times in history, and our kids are going to look back and say, why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you
Yeah.
tell me the truth?
And
Yeah.
that's going to be the saddest part of it all, is the relationships between parents and children that are going to be ruined by the fad that is happening right now.
It's true. It's true. That's like, it is destroying families in a big way. It's so important. Well, thank you for standing up and speaking out.
Thank you for
Thank
having
you
me.
for joining me. And we'll talk again, Jeremy.
Yeah, I enjoy our conversations.
All the best.
All right, you too. Thanks.
Thank you.